It's Friday, September 1st, 2023. Welcome to episode 68 of the Alameda Postcast, an audio service of the Alameda Post. I'm your host, Scott Peeler. In this edition of the Postcast, the Alameda Rent Program holds a public workshop to discuss potential changes to the capital improvement plan. An Alameda resident tests positive for West Nile virus. The Shelter in Peace program looks to assist immigrants and refugees in their journey to a new life. The Post joins forces with other nonprofit news agencies, and the long Labor Day weekend includes an event to help support the victims of the Maui fires. These stories and more on this episode of the Alameda Postcast. Our top story: on Monday, the Alameda Rent Program held a public workshop to review proposed updates to the city's capital improvement plan. This is the system that allows landlords to recoup the costs of improvements to their property. A retroactive moratorium was placed on the program in June after residents of South Shore Apartments objected to the property owner's application to recover $24 million in costs through rent increases. Rent Program Director Bill Chapin and management analyst Ryan Halpern offered two options for updating the CIP policy. Option A would eliminate the CIP altogether. Instead, landlords would use the rent ordinance's fair return process to recover the cost of capital improvements. The fair return process involves comparing current net income, revenue minus expenses, to the net income of the base year, presumed to be 2015 before the regulation of rents. Expenses include the amortized cost of capital improvements. The landlord then files a petition for consideration. If the hearing officer agrees that net income adjusted for inflation has decreased, then rent adjusts upward. Option B would update the CIP policy to better balance the concerns of tenants and landlords. Under this proposal, landlords could amortize the cost of specific capital improvements and pass it through to tenants. The pass-through would not be considered part of the rent. Consequently, the pass-through amount would stay the same over the amortization period and not compound with the annual general adjustment. Public comment was predictably split. Tenants preferred option A, with some noting that empty units in South Shore represented an untapped income source for the property owners. Landlords of smaller properties spoke in favor of option B, with one speaker noting that if the city wants landlords to implement gas to electric appliance conversions, it will be expensive and the city should maintain the CIP program as an incentive to perform that work. Next up, the proposals will be brought before City Council, likely sometime in October. For full details, including a more in-depth analysis of the finances involved, see Karen Jensen's article at alamedapost.com/news. Our wet winter may have alleviated the drought, but it also created the perfect conditions for mosquitoes to breed. Last week, Alameda County Public Health and the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District confirmed the first human case of West Nile virus here in Alameda. Thus far, no West Nile-positive mosquito pools have been found in Alameda, but surrounding areas, notably Livermore, have seen a fair number of cases. West Nile is typically a mild disease, producing headache, fever, muscle and joint aches, nausea, and fatigue. Most people recover on their own, and only 1% of those infected become seriously ill. However, the risks do go up for those over 50 and for the immunocompromised. One of the best ways to help stop the spread of West Nile is to eliminate areas of standing water. Mosquitoes don't need much to breed in, so pay attention to landscape areas where water accumulates. Mosquito repellent is highly effective. If you're not a fan of DEET, many effective repellents use picaridin. There are also natural botanical alternatives. If you seem to attract mosquitoes, you're not imagining things. Genetics and body chemistry do make some people tastier to the flying pests than to others. For more information on the steps you can take to keep West Nile away from you and your family, see alamedapost.com/news. The refugee's journey, often a difficult one. New country, new customs, language barriers, and usually no time to prepare in order to become familiar with the way things work. That's where Shelter in Peace makes a difference. Shelter in Peace is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide affordable transitional housing to refugees supported by sponsoring organizations. A sponsoring group can be any community organization, such as a church, a service organization, or even a group of committed friends willing to guarantee that the rent is paid and to accompany the refugees for 6 months to a year in acclimating to life in America. SIP contracts for residential units in Alameda, acting as the master tenant on contracts. Refugees then call these places home for the first 6 months to a year while they enroll children in schools, seek work, develop credit history, and establish landlord and personal references. Such history and references are critical to securing longer-term housing and better jobs. Shelter in Peace stays with the accompanying groups, is always in the background, checks in to ensure everything goes well, and offers help if needed. Our own Karen Jensen is involved with Shelter in Peace, and she has shared a moving testimony of helping families not only acclimate to a new life, but to thrive and take advantage of new opportunities. Find her story at alamedapost.com/op-ed. Stronger Together. That's the driving force behind the Alliance of Nonprofit News Outlets, or ANO. The Alameda Post is proud to be one of the 17 founding news organizations that have banded together to increase funding to nonprofit news providers across the country. In the changing environment of news sources, organizations like the Post are filling a void left by the departure of traditional news sources. Public Broadcasting has noted that since 2004, over 2,000 newspapers across the country have closed, and too often those that remain are running on skeleton staffs with little, if any, true local content. ANO seeks to provide a unified voice in an effort to better make the case for funding to larger funding organizations. By their very nature, nonprofit news organizations are small, and too often funding groups are looking for larger recipients. ANO will provide a channel for these funding organizations to better deliver needed money to organizations like the Post. Local news is critical to our civic health. Nonprofit news organizations provide a resource that is not beholden to any one viewpoint. We at the Post look forward to working with ANO to keep independent nonprofit news alive and well. For a detailed look at the founding of ANO and our publisher's thoughts on what it means to the Post, see the article at alamedapost.com/op-ed. Last week I mentioned the grand opening of the Radium Runway, complete with its new jumbo-sized art installation. Maurice Ramirez and his camera were there, and he brought back some spectacular photos of the event and the art. Find the article at alamedapost.com/features. A win for Alameda's Bryan Woo in his second start back from the injured list. Bryan turned in one of his best performances as the Mariners beat the Oakland A's 7-0 in Seattle on Monday. 6 innings matched his longest outing of the season. He made quick work of the A's, gathering 3 hits, striking out 5, walking 1, and inducing 2 double plays. Bryan threw only 69 pitches, 45 for strikes, and lowered his ERA to 4.15. Heading into Friday's action, the Mariners were tied with the Houston Astros atop the AL West, but Seattle holds the tiebreaker thanks to winning the season series with Houston. Bryan is now 2-3 on the year with 8 no decisions. Next up, Bryan faces the cellar-dwelling Mets Sunday in New York, game time 10:40 a.m. From Double-A ball to the thick of a pennant race. Quite a year for Alameda's Bryan Woo. In episode 65, I mentioned the return of Marty's on Encinal. Lots of folks happy to see the return of a beloved breakfast and lunch spot. On Monday, a smash-and-grab robbery attempt resulted in the destruction of their front door and the loss of part of their point-of-sale system. So if you're looking to support local business, head on over to Encinal in between Chestnut and Lafayette and show some love to the folks at Marty's. At the end of last week's episode, I mentioned that Santa Cruz's Humble Sea Brewing had opened their tap house on Alameda Point next to Saltbreaker. Got a chance to check it out last weekend. They've hit the ground running, and they're definitely pouring something for every taste. Took advantage of their smaller pours to try a variety of things. As a fan of the classic styles, I strongly recommend the Humble Sea Helles and the Lager Fusion. Welcome to Alameda Humble Sea. Our next walking history tour is Sunday, September 10th. Dennis Evanosky presents Alameda's Northern Waterfront, focusing on the major shipbuilding sites of the first half of the 20th century. Meet at 10 a.m. at the foot of Mariner Square Drive, just east of the Pasta Pelican. For tickets and details, visit alamedapost.com/tours. The Alameda firefighters teaming up with Faction Brewing tonight, Friday, for a fundraiser to help the victims of the Maui fires. They'll be serving up chicken teriyaki along with Faction brews, as well as some non-alcoholic alternatives. There will also be T-shirts, raffles, and Hawaiian music. All proceeds will be donated to the California Fire Foundation for Maui victims. Details on the Alameda Firefighters Facebook page. More events for your Labor Day weekend, alamedapost.com/events. The Birds continues at Altarina Playhouse. Great Saturday for car buffs, starting with Cars and Coffee at Greer Family Mortuary from 8 to 10. Then head to Carica Park for the second annual Nick Bianchi Memorial Car Show from 9 a.m. until noon, benefiting the College of Alameda's Automotive Technology program. The Crab Cove Fish Festival runs from 10 to 4 on McKay Avenue. Pacific Pinball Museum offers their monthly Little Flippers class Saturday at 11:30. Don't forget, time for the monthly Alameda Antiques Fair on Sunday. Plan your travels accordingly. Details on these events and more at alamedapost.com/events. Thank you for supporting local news for Alameda. Remember, you can support us as a member. alamedapost.com/memberships. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Mastodon, as well as our own subreddit. Find the Postcast wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell your smart device to play the Alameda Postcast podcast. As you celebrate Labor Day weekend, do take a moment to remember those who sacrificed to make this holiday possible. From workplace safety to the 8-hour workday to many benefits we take for granted, we owe a debt to those who stood up for workers' rights. I'm Scott Peeler. I'll be back next Friday with episode 69 of the Alameda Postcast.